The meeting is called to order at 7:01 p.m. Please rise, and the clerk will lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It is recommended that the board approve the September 22nd, 2020 agenda as submitted. May I have a motion and a second that the agenda for September 22nd be approved as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. It's recommended that we approve the following consent agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of September 8, 2020 as submitted, the acceptance of the recommendations from the Committee on Special Education, the acceptance of recommendations from the Committee of Preschool Special Education, the acceptance of recommendations from the Superintendent of Personnel Changes, and the approval of the request to dispose of unserviceable textbooks. May I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. That takes us straight to special reports. Dr. Putnam?
Yeah, we have one special report tonight, and that is, thanks, Dr. Driffill. This is the summary of summer programs. I'm having some computer issues, so thankfully we have our Director of Technology in the audience. But I can invite up our special guest for a summary of our summer programs. And this typically for the board and the community is we do work does not stop in the summer, although our students aren't here and our teachers aren't here. Lots of work is going on, including our teachers. So I think they're going to come up one at a time for social distancing and present. And we have Mr. Dressler first. I'll turn it over to you, Scott.
Good evening.
Hi.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Hello.
Is it not working again?
Oh, where am I pointing? There we go. Pointing over to the right. So the team and I are going to talk tonight about the summer programs, curriculum projects, professional development, and technology. Within that, the extended school year, the elementary math and reading camp, and virtual health. So I am the Director of Special Education and Pupil Personnel Services, so I just want to say thank you again. This summer, I could probably say was one of our most successful for our extended school year. Before I want to start, I want to be able to give thanks to the staff that was able to pull the program together. So we offered a 100% virtual program this summer. Districts were given the opportunity to create an in-person. We just did not have enough time to be able to do that. So within the framework, on the March 27th memo from the state, it says that we deliver special education services to the greatest extent possible. We knew that based on how some things were going, putting students in front of a computer screen for 4.5 hours, specifically students with disabilities, was challenging for parents and for students over the spring. So we decided to kind of look at that framework and offer what we called as a direct instruction and direct connect. So with the help of Rick Borman, and we had an intern, Jackie Sauter, and all of the teachers, they threw this together, and it was fantastic. So we offered still the two programs that we usually do, Program A and Program B. We staffed it with 18 teachers and therapists. You can see that we didn't have any teaching assistants on there this year. But we supported 125 students from K-12 in Direct Connect 30-minute sessions. So that's up from what we've done historically in the past. ESY, Extended School Year Services, are determined by the Committee on Special Education. That committee looks at progress towards goals, and over breaks, they look at regression. So if students knew a specific skill beforehand, after the break, they look at the progress towards that skill afterwards. So students qualify based on the regression that they have during those breaks. So during this break in actual school, and what it looks like is more students qualified for our extended school year program. So we offered that 12-1-1 and 12-1-3-1, that's our Program A. Those are our special classes. We really made a direct connect with students, and I have what a typical schedule will look like, but it's in the area of math, reading, writing, and related services. We chose to, based on the feedback that we received in the spring, to really hit like a 2-day-a-week, really focused instruction, quick hit, so that it's very direct for students in their areas of weakness based on that IEP. So the staff instructed 4 out of 5 days a week. Students received their service on either Mondays and Wednesdays or Tuesdays and Thursdays. At the end of the summer, we share the progress with all of our SEAs, Emily Bust at the high school, Jennifer Lerner and Rick Borman, as well as the teachers receive all of that progress. So Program A, a typical schedule for a student would look like this. So the teacher would be instructing from 8:30 to 11:15, but you can see every main area, for the most part, that's covered within our IEPs would be addressed. So they look at that reading deficit based on the regression, based on those breaks, and they target that skill area. Program B is what we typically offer for related services. So these students come in a regular extended school year program. They bust in different times throughout the day. Program A was you're here from 8:30 to 12:30 throughout. This program was different because it really focused on the math and reading, and typically maybe a related service. Staff, again, instructed 4 out of 5 days a week. That involved the speech therapy, OT, and physical therapy as well. And again, with this program as well, we share that progress with all of the teachers that are receiving those students this school year. So this is a typical student schedule. So it's not as long because it's a targeted area in reading and math. We have the special class schedule or program in Program A, and this is the Program B schedule where it really just focuses on reading and math. You may have in there sprinkled a speech and language session, but many students primarily focus on reading and math. So the staff. So this year, because we weren't in session in a typical school, staff was very flexible in how they service students. So it was a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They would service some groups. Mondays and Wednesdays would be the same group. And then they would service different groups on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Typically, what we found, we sent out a survey prior to extended school year. We sent out a survey after extended school year, surveying our staff and our parents. And I can report that it was overwhelmingly positive for the shifts that we made. With the help of the tech and the directors, we were able to support teachers. We integrated and we transitioned to a Teams platform at ESY in a very short time. So we were able to offer professional development for parents and for teachers to be able to guide them in that. We created a framework so that the teachers had a framework for that they could organize their schedules and their students' access to different assignments. So we found a lot of success in that. We also utilized the Zoom platform as well. But by the end of summer, every staff member was using Teams as a uniform platform to instruct. Again, that was an overview. But again, I want to say thanks just to, again, the ESY staff. The growth and the determination that they showed this summer, probably I'm the most proud of the staff that I've ever been of everything that they've done this summer. It was a very trying time to be able to service students with disabilities, but they really pulled through, and the students as well and families. That collaboration was part of that memo on the 27th that New York State, that's that partnership with the community and the school, and I really think Penfield showed that this summer with our ESY program. So up next. Oh,
Before you go, any questions for Mr. Dreschler?
grapes and cake. There we go.
All right. Well, good. Well, thank you. I know this, it was a scramble for everybody, and, it's just great that everybody's progressed so much, because I'm sure we'll have more of this, and we'll be able to take advantage of it more as time goes on.
Hello, Kristen
Hey.
Williamson, Director of Humanities. Nice to see everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. Hi. So we're going to chat a little bit about our summer elementary reading and math camp, which we've held for several years now. There were some things that were same this year, some things that were a little different. Mostly it was completely virtual. But we still had students from all 4 of our elementary buildings attend. We still had teachers from all 4 of our elementary buildings. And this year we added into the mix our English as a new language providers, which actually increased our numbers of multi-language learners attending camp this year. We still had 2 90-minute sessions. This allows kids to go to reading camp and math camp if they need it. And we were fortunate that we were able to use the data, as we always do, from September to February to use that to invite students who would benefit from these camps. Scott. Is there a trick, Scott? You're doing it. Did you guys punk me?
I put them up to it, Kristen.
All right. So the details with our elementary reading camp, we actually hit an all-time high with our numbers. So we had almost 150 children attend camp. And what we did is we organized the camp into 3 30-minute sessions. And each of those 30-minute sessions had a specific learning target that was attached to a specific resource, and then that teacher kind of became an expert in that target for the 3 weeks of instruction. So depending on your grade level, depending on the student, you may have focused, some of your sessions may have focused on ensuring that you read accurately and that you read at an appropriate rate. Sessions on comprehension, also sessions on responding to reading and writing to demonstrate your comprehension. Spelling, vocabulary, and grammar were all points of focus for the camp. At the end of our camp, our wonderful coordinator, Nikki Heinzler, put out a survey, and out of the 70 families that responded, 67 stated that this was a really positive experience for them. So kudos to all our teachers, kudos to our camp coordinator, and a great year for our summer reading camp. Nicole's going to give you a little bit more detail on the math camp.
All right, good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so we had about 72 students that attended our math virtual camp. Similar to ELA and reading, we set it up in 3 different stations. So students rotated through these stations. They actually got to see a different teacher for each station, which we were hoping would increase their engagement or maintain their engagement, listening to somebody different speak after 30 minutes. We also incorporated brain breaks and move breaks in between each of the 30-minute sessions. So the sessions consisted of number sense, fluency and operations, and problem solving, as those typically are the areas in which our elementary students struggle the most. And they're also the areas where you can see the biggest regression during the summer. So we have been pretty consistent in keeping that our main focus over the last few years for math camp. It's just this year we had to do it a little differently, that it was all virtual. Similar to the ESY program, we also use Teams as the platform. And it was a great way for us to kind of test drive the using Teams with our students, as we knew we were going to be doing that this fall. So one of the most helpful things that we found for the camp, both reading and math, was afterwards surveying both teachers and parents. And we had a great response rate, as Kristen just mentioned, for reading, the same for math. We got comments that were really helpful for us, and then turnkeying and working with teachers when we started just a couple weeks ago, and then planning over the summer. We found out things that worked, such as frequent brain breaks and movement breaks, and setting up really clear guidelines and sharing those with families and parents beforehand. Those were all things that we were able to learn from this session, or from both sessions, reading and math, and then incorporate into what we're doing right now. So I find that we were really lucky that we got to kind of test drive that in our small group. The teachers were phenomenal. They were really flexible. They learned a lot. They taught us things that we didn't even know, that again, we've now been able to share with the teachers that are using it on a daily basis. So for that reason, I find that the camp was extremely successful. Also, the parent feedback was very positive, and that is comforting to know, because we weren't sure going into this new environment what it would look like, and it was really successful. Okay, so This summer for health, it was a little bit different than in previous summers. We've always offered Health 1 and 2, but given the situation that we were in, we limited it just to virtual Health 2. And it's always been a hybrid program where they came in person and did work online. We obviously, because of the circumstances, it was all online. So we had 59 students that attended the session with Gail, and the topics included those that you see there on the screen, the similar topics that we've included every year. Again, I think one of the great benefits of this program is it opening up the student schedule for students to take other electives. I know a family who participated in this summer, and they were so happy because the student now got to take an extra music course this year because they had gotten the Health 2 kind of out of the way. Not the right term to say, but they had fulfilled that credit. So we're happy that we were able to offer health in some form, given the unique circumstances that we were all in this summer. So moving along, we're going to talk a little bit about curriculum development. So it was a busy, busy summer. You would not know that there was still a pandemic going on by the participation of all the teachers and the administrators and teacher leaders in our curriculum writing this summer. There were many, many projects that went on. We started every session reviewing social distancing guidelines and things like that to make sure people were comfortable. We also offered every teacher the option to participate via Zoom or in person. So that was interesting too, because it gave us more experience with working with that platform. And all in all, it was a very successful summer. I'm going to highlight a couple of the projects. There's too many to go through all of them, but I'm going to highlight a couple for you. The first one I'd like to highlight, because it was something that when we originally were planning for our curriculum writing, this wasn't kind of in the plan, but as we were meeting with teachers, and teachers now knew that the plan for elementary was that core was going to be split among multiple providers, I was gathering teachers for curriculum writing and talking about curriculum, and they just kept saying, but how are we going to make this work if multiple providers are teaching core? It's one thing when they're teaching RTI because that's separate, but when they're teaching core and a student has their classroom teacher Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday seeing somebody totally different, how do we make sure all of that aligns? That progression of the learning targets and the alignment of the core instruction is really, really important, and teachers were really struggling with how are we going to make that seamless. Yes, we know we have Wednesdays to collaborate, but we also know that there's only so many hours of the day, and that collaboration involves enrichment and reading teachers and special education teachers and special area providers. So this kind of grew out of teachers talking and expressing concerns, and it was really led by the teachers that we come up with these progression guides that have since now, they're being used K-5, every grade level, and the teachers are finding it really, really helpful because it allows them to know this teacher is going to be working on these specific learning targets, this is where they're going to leave off, and this is where I'm going to pick up. So it wasn't the most, it wasn't the curriculum writing that we normally do in terms of it being big focus goals and things like that, but it ended up being extremely helpful for teachers to kind of ease their anxiety over what this school year was going to look like. And then we also went through all of the assessments and made revisions as needed, so that was helpful as well. I'd also like to point out that our science curriculum at the elementary level now is complete. We are completely aligned, K-5 now, to the NISLIS. NISLIS, the state did delay implementation by a year, so we are actually ahead of the game. And that's something that I think teachers feel really good about, that curriculum now is set, and then they can now, over the next couple of years, fine-tune it and get familiar with it and comfortable with it. And we have trainings offered, and Shane Watterson is a wonderful resource for all of that. She led that curriculum work. At Bay Trail, this was really exciting. The general music course has completely changed for our 8th grade students. It used to be that you could take guitar or keyboard, and it was kind of a little bit limiting. Like my sons, one took guitar, one took keyboard, but both of them kind of felt like, oh, I kind of wish I could have done a little bit of the other one. So now general music actually incorporates both, and it also incorporates things on music technology, music careers, hip hop and rap. We feel that it is really going to be applicable and broader, and we're hoping that it makes even more students interested in our music program as they come here to the high school, especially the music technology part. We have great programs in editing software, and Greg Landowski is doing a great job here, and we're really trying to grow that program. At the high school, we also did some new units for earth science and living environment, chemistry, and physics. I'm really proud to say that we right now, for the first time since I've been here, have a common scope and sequence and pacing guide for all 4 of those Regents courses. We thought that was extremely important, especially given the situation we're in this year. If we, need to shut down school, or teachers need to collaborate and help and plan lessons together to kind of all be in it together, you really need to have that common pacing. So that was a goal of ours over the summer, and we did it. And I'm really proud of the groups, the teachers that did that work, and Shane. And then another thing we did, but it's a little unfortunate, we did develop a new yoga course, but given everything we're doing in the constraints on the scheduling, we're not able to offer it this year, but we have the curriculum now, so I'm hoping in years ahead we'll be able to offer that to our students. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristen.
So in humanities, I'm going to start with elementary. We had a number of projects, but I'm just going to highlight 2, and that's our 3rd and 4th grade curriculum writing this summer. So together with Shane Watterson, the science TOSA, and Sheena Conway, who at the time was the humanities TOSA, we worked with those classroom teachers to develop fully integrated units. And so we took different content areas: English language arts, science, social studies, some of the New York State social emotional learning benchmarks, and some of the social justice standards from Teaching Tolerance. And we developed units that incorporate all of those. So our goal really, as we talked with the writers, was we don't want kids to know, hey, I'm in science time now, I'm in social studies time now, we're just in learning time, and it's a really cohesive experience for the student. So 3rd grade developed a unit called Who Am I and Who Are We? Building a Responsible Community. That first unit that they developed all about personal and group identity. So what makes us unique and what connects us? How do we go about taking different perspectives? And a lot of that was going to, the plan was to integrate the ELA standards, so looking at character analysis, different experiences of characters in literature. And then they also brought in social studies in that unit with geography. How does geography impact our identity and how we live? In 4th grade, their first unit is entitled, What Does It Mean to Be Human? Again, they're looking at identity and how an individual's identity contributes to the group's identity. Again, looking at literature, how do our experiences shape who we are? And then incorporating, this is a little bit more incorporating science, so they're looking at the body systems that are controlled by the brain, including how do we develop a growth mindset? Our brains are plastic and malleable. How do we manage emotions? So really important units for the start of the year at an elementary level. At the secondary level, at the middle school at Bay Trail, our ELA courses were our focus. So again, they're updating their maps to make sure they're aligned to the next generation standards. Again, looking at some of the social emotional learning benchmarks and the social justice standards from Teaching Tolerance. So for example, 8th grade ELA worked on their immigration unit, updating that. That unit also focuses on writing a claim with supporting details and evidence. So for that particular unit, they incorporated the social emotional learning benchmarks around perspective taking. At the high school, we really focused on our social studies courses. We were ready to take the new U.S. state exam this past spring. Obviously, that didn't happen, so we took this summer as an opportunity to look back at our maps, look back at our assessments, make sure that they're aligned, and we are still ready to take that exam. And I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about our summer symposium series. I really like alliteration. So we had a series of days this summer in which we really had a focus for each day on one pretty large topic. And that while this idea was born at my dining room table with Sheena Conway, who is now our Assistant Director of Professional Learning, this was really a full team effort. We had teachers presenting, we had administrators presenting, we had teachers and administrators attending, we had clerical support making sure our balloons were blown up every Tuesday, we had security making sure participants could find their rooms. So just a great example of Team Penfield. So the first symposium was just for our K-5 staff, our literacy symposium. And here we just continued our work with ensuring that our instructions aligned with best practice with research. So sessions focused on explicit vocabulary instruction. How do we build comprehension? How do we teach kids to take notes so that it actually enhances their comprehension? What's the best ways to teach spelling? Why in kindergarten might you want a sound wall instead of a traditional word wall? So things like that. Very well attended, great feedback on our surveys for that one. Our second symposium was focused on equity. For this one, we did have some internal capacity. We had some teacher and administrator presenters, but we also brought in external presenters. So we had some great Dr. Willis, Dr. Wagstaff, we had Shane Wigand, Mary Beth Alco, and Kareem Hayes all presented for us in addition to our internal presenters. So sessions, we had a parent panel session that had phenomenal feedback, a student panel session, we did a session on the history of redlining, a lot of culturally responsive education sessions, implicit bias, and our goal for the day was really to just begin a conversation and to give a little language to some of the things we want to talk about. So what's the difference between culturally responsive education, multicultural education, and social justice education? And just dipping our toes into that vocabulary so we can begin to build it up. Our final symposium was originally called Teaching and Learning Post-COVID. After a few weeks, we realized we had to change the name, but we maintained the focus, which was technology. How do we provide professional learning for our staff so that they're able to use the tools we have available here? Achievement gaps. So with a closure of the length that we had, there may be students coming back with gaps that in a typical summer they wouldn't have. So what are we doing to scaffold? Because we got to keep the same expectations, we got to get them there, but how can we get them there? What is best practice? And then the third focus was social emotional learning. If we want them to learn, we have to attend to their social emotional needs first. So how do we attend to that? Because a pandemic is stressful for everyone, I think. Bless you.
Thank you.
So again, very well attended, great model for Team Penfield, a lot of people being involved, and we did a survey for each one, and wonderful feedback, and I'm really happy that we have now this internal capacity. A lot of these teacher presenters, administrator presenters are continuing to present during the year to offer their support as well. All right.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Jason DeLorenz. I'm the Director of Technology and, until recently, the Assistant Director of Professional Learning. Just again, Kristen and Sheena did a fantastic job with the symposium series. It's in the category of professional development, but I kind of took a back seat to that and was just more of a support role, and that was really all of them, and it was, I can't say enough about how they did. And it just goes to show what capable hands PD is in now that Sheena's taken my spot in that office. So just want to throw that out there. So in terms of PD, over the summer, staff completed a combined total of over 3,200 hours of professional development. This is obviously a challenge because we can't have too many people in one place. How are you going to do this? But we also have very large professional development needs in this new model of learning that we're all a part of. So how did we do that? One was the symposiums, but a lot of the sessions that we ran this summer occurred asynchronously, whether it's via webinars or via a little pet project of mine that I was tinkering with when the shutdown occurred that, just got thrust into the limelight, whether it was ready or not, which was the online professional learning portal, which is just an online system where Penfield staff can go and participate in basically self-directed professional learning on a variety of topics, whether it's technology or social emotional learning or culturally responsive education, or Kristen produced a number of modules on literacy and early childhood education that staff were able to participate in in their free time, whether it was the weekend, at home, whenever they had a minute in the summer from the comfort of their own home. And via this platform, over 400 staff members completed 6 one-hour mandatory trainings in Office 365 in an attempt to get staff a little more up to speed with that technology and ready to go here in the fall. In terms of professional development also, we did welcome 30 new teaching staff members, teachers and counselors in our new teacher orientation this year, and it's a number that is going up, but they were not hired in time to attend new teacher orientation. So we had 30 people in the Commons and brought them on board, and we reworked things to try to make it a little bit more responsive, again, to this new environment that we all find ourselves in today. So that's kind of PD, so I'll touch on technology as well. In the technology department, thank you for advancing the slide. I don't know who's doing it. Thanks, Dan. In the technology department, when I put my other hat on, the technology team, the 6 technicians and our senior network engineer, they worked tirelessly this summer to take a district that was not one-to-one, right? We did not have one device for each student, and figure out a way to implement one-to-one technology from the time that Dr. Putnam called me in May until September, right? Which involved a total overhaul of our network administration systems, our web filtering. We had to get more licenses for a variety of products. We had to find and purchase laptops, and we also collected every single student laptop in the entire district. We brought them all here to the cafeteria at PHS. We fully cleaned, re-imaged, and assigned all of those laptops to students in our district, which was a whole team effort. And we also had to purchase a large number of devices. We've, at this point, placed an order for over 2,700 devices. We've only received 1,000 of them due to Department of Commerce actions against certain manufacturers in China. That was a struggle which, we have overcome, and now today I can say that we have successfully provided a device to every student from grades 6 through 12 in Penfield, and every student in grades K through 5 who has requested one via one of the parent surveys, or by calling their school building, or calling me, or emailing Mr. Pfeiffer or Dr. Putnam, or really anyone, right? And that number just keeps coming in every day, and we're trying to fill those requests. Eventually, we will run out of laptops, but I do expect the next shipment to be coming in early October, and then we'll process those and get those out to students as well. And at that time, we'll also be able to fill some more carts and put those laptop carts in the elementary buildings, because we don't necessarily want the elementary students bringing their laptops back and forth on a daily basis, because they'll most likely be damaged that way. So we're doing our best to make that happen and as quickly as possible, and the team is working around basically around the clock, judging by the emails they send me to make that happen for the district. We've also purchased 125 internet hotspots to complement the handful that we purchased in the spring. We've successfully gotten, I would say, about half of those out into the community at this point. They just came in pretty recently, and we had some configuring to do to make them work with our systems, and we've gotten about half of those out into the community. And the technicians were working today to prep an additional dozen or 2 dozen of those and get those out, and we'll be getting those out into the community as we can over the next week or 2. We've also implemented a new internet filtering system, because the old internet filtering system did not work if you were a student and took your laptop home. And so we have purchased integrated and developed, and rolled this system out as well, which was a challenge for Mike Delala, the network engineer, but he's done, he's risen to the challenge and made that happen as well. And that is online and working seamlessly for our students and staff as well. This is just the tip of the iceberg of the changes that we've started in the technology department this summer, whether it's new equipment, new processes, new systems. We're really re-examining everything. And on top of, supporting the professional development realm of helping teachers learn how to use these new tools, on top of supporting parents and students as they attempt to learn to use these new tools, and getting everything up and running. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for the group? Lisa?
I actually have two questions, but my first one is for you. I know that other districts do some family-supported insurance plans around one-to-one devices. Do we have plans to move in that direction?
Currently, we do not have a family-supported insurance plan. Due to the speed and nature of our one-to-one rollout, we just kind of had to make it happen as fast as possible. But that is something that I'm in talks with Dr. Driffill about, and maybe implementing in the future. We'll have to discuss that, and I'll honestly defer to him and take his lead on that.
So currently then we're doing that? We're providing insurance for all or whatever we're supposed to be doing?
We have a device acceptable use policy where there are fines and damages associated with replacement fees for intentional overt damages, and then, yeah.
Gotcha. I was just curious.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's our form that we have folks sign is slightly shorter than the Apple agreement when you download a document or a program. But we have had, to be fair, a couple of issues where a laptop was injured, and so we work with the family to find a reasonable process. But when you sign off, when you get the computer and you sign off, as I did, we know we are in it. And so I can tell you that some districts have used insurance programs, and others have done sort of self-insurance in terms of holding on to funds and then utilizing that as they come up. Sometimes, like with insurance, you pay for something that you don't ever use because of the language in it. So it is something we are looking at, but Jason was very kind to say that we also looked at the time and have had to get laptops out. Our goal and hope, and we'll be working this year, Jason and Dan and myself, to make sure that the one-to-one initiative is not just a COVID-related plan. So, this is our hope would be that this continues on for years to come, and therefore we have some time to make sure that our plans for insurance. Jason has a lot of work ahead of him, and once he gets all these computers out, the next step is, okay, how are we going to do this again in September? Right. But hopefully it will not be under the COVID stress that we're dealing with now, and we can be a little bit more timely with it.
Thank you.
Any questions? Well,
Mark?
I'm sorry.
Jim has his hand up.
Oh, do you have a question?
I'd just like to, I remind the public and the board, I think every year of this, but I often receive comments about, how relaxing is the summer? How nice is it to have summers off? And I remind people when they say that from the district office standpoint, this is actually it's always our busiest time of year. Mm-hmm. But I think what you saw today is an example of how busy it really is, and then to add on the work that this team did to help prepare us to open under very different models and different circumstances. They were always available to the building administrators and to teacher leaders to talk through how instruction might work, what it might look like, to help develop plans. They played key roles at our leadership summit to work with the building administrators, and held countless meetings with those folks afterwards as we began to prepare and roll out. And I can never thank them enough for the work that they do every summer, but this summer was obviously an incredible event to get ready to open schools, and they were on call and ready and available to support anybody and everybody who needed it throughout the summer. And again, Jason and the techs, the work that they did turning around the number of devices that they did was absolutely unbelievable. I know we're not perfect right now, but there was a lot of hard work to put into where we are, and we know that there's a lot more hard work to come, and I have to express my thanks to this team for everything that they've done.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Really, the reality is we piloted a whole new educational process live in real time. And I think it you know, as you said, it says a lot for the whole district to be able to do that, and that it's gone as well as it has. When there's so many things that can go wrong, I think it's been exemplary. I do have a couple questions.
Mark, Lisa had 2 questions.
Oh, I'm
She
sorry.
mentioned. Sorry. I wanted to-
You're right, I had another question. Oh, my question was about camp, though, so do you have technology questions for Jason?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so my camp question was, did you guys get a feeling from the surveys that the participation numbers were up because parents were concerned about achievement gap, or people just were going to be home because they had nothing else to do? Or I just wondered if you got a sense of why those numbers were higher.
I think one issue.
Nicole, I'm sorry. Could you come to the microphone?
I think one thing that helped is that for this program, the district does not provide transportation. So we had a lot more participate this year because they could do it from their home. And I think simply because parents didn't have to drive them to and from, that helped our numbers. Do you want to add anything? She concurs.
Great, thank you.
So you talked about all of these things to do. I guess the first thing is, how do you think we're positioned for spring? Because this is, you know, the expectation is just going to go on probably for the year. If we're lucky that we can keep this hybrid and we don't go to full online. I know with all the foundational work that you've done with curriculum and the foundational work with the skill building for the staff, what do we need to do for the spring, or are we on track?
Good question. I feel 100% more confident where we are now than where we were just a couple months ago. I think that the work that the teacher leaders and the administrators in district office, and I think the work that has been done, as Jim says, it's been nonstop. And the learning curve has been very, very fast. So we started in March with people who were very resistant to Teams, to Zoom, to technology. And I think everybody realized very quickly that there's not a way around it right now. And people that I've worked with for years that have always been a little resistant to new things or to change and to technology, you know, they're calling us and saying, you know, help us. We want help. We know we got to get there. The district was also extremely proactive, and we've now appointed technology coaches at each of our buildings. So the elementary, each building has 1, middle school has 3, and the high school has 4. So those individuals work with Sheena Conway and myself and Jason and other administrators to help that on-the-spot training when that teacher is like, geez, I don't understand why that child keeps muting me during instruction. True story, kindergarten's muting the teacher. But that's what we're here for, is to answer those questions. So every day it's a new day, and every day we're solving more problems and finding out more things that we still don't know. You know, there's always more questions, but I feel really confident about where we are because I think we have the support system in place, and the mandatory training that we did over the summer, I think was extremely helpful, and Jason set that up. So I think we're in a much better place than we were in the spring, not to mention everybody having devices and having those hotspots that need it. You know, we don't have to worry about access. And that was our number one concern over the spring was, you know, who can we not give access to right now? Without the access, the learning couldn't happen. Did that answer your question?
Did Barb, I see you have a question?
Well, it's not really a question. It's more a statement of support. Retired speech pathologist sitting right here on this board. There is no way that I could have done what had to be done in the spring. And just listening to what you started in March and you carried on. And it's not just here. I mean, it's a statement of support for all educators, both countywide, statewide. I'm just amazed. And yes, we still have things to do, but we're here to support that. And we're here, what I hear and what I saw in every part of this presentation was the kids came first. So just a statement of support. So thank you.
And I think honestly, there's some really positive things that we are going to be able to take from this experience. I had a teacher stop me in the hall the other day, and it's one of our AP physics teachers, or chemistry teachers. And I asked him how it was going, and he said, you know, it's been challenging, but there's certain things about this situation that we're in now that are a little bit more refreshing, that we are focusing really on, because they have smaller class sizes, they're able to get to those kids and they're getting to know them better, and they're focusing on that social emotional health and well-being. You know, it wasn't day one, here's just the course syllabus. It was, wow, you haven't been here since March. You know, and we were really intentional about telling teachers to start the year off soft, to start it off knowing that some people went through trauma, some people are still really uncomfortable, you know, people are in masks. It's not like it normally is. And I think that those things we can take with us moving forward, you know, those soft starts and really paying attention to the well-being of everybody, the self-care of teachers and of students. Those are things I think we can learn from this situation and bring forward with us post-pandemic when we get there.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all four of you for all the work you've done this summer and preparing for this year and presenting that to us. And we look forward to hearing from more as the year goes on.
I'm sure we'll be back.
Thank you.
That concludes special reports, and I would just say thank you to the presenters, and if they want to quietly maybe go say hello to their family and friends, that would be wonderful. They've worked a lot of late nights to keep us afloat.
Thank you. This is the visitor speaking time for the public to comment. This time is designated for district residents to bring their comments to the board. The board encourages residents to share their opinions, voice concerns, and offer suggestions in a constructive atmosphere. Matters involving particular individuals or the specifics of negotiations are not permitted during public session and should be addressed privately with the board president or the superintendent. Comments brought to the board will be taken under consideration. However, this is not a time when the board can answer questions or engage in dialogue. A request to speak form must be filled out prior to the start of the meeting and given to the district clerk. Speakers are expected to identify themselves with their name and address before presenting and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less. The board president reserves the right to limit the total amount of time for visitor speaking based on the length of the agenda. Written communications to the board are also always encouraged. Do we have anyone here to speak today?
No.
Nope. All right. There we go. Getting the wrong one. Okay, so it's our student representative report, so I'll turn it over to Abby.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Do I give my report? Okay. Starting with Penfield High School, there was a new mural painted to recognize the class of 2020. It included each of the graduating seniors' last names with a big 2020 in the middle with a mask. Clubs and sports were postponed until circumstances permit. The robotics team delivered happy birthday kits to children in need K through 2, and they also attended a drive at the Penfield Ecumenical Food Shelf. I've been there personally, and it was a great experience to volunteer there. And lastly, Dr. Maloney took a bike ride with Mr. Johnson's PE class. Next, in Indian Landing, Mrs. Alexander found a new way to practice social distancing called mummy walking. She had them put their arms out in front of them like mummies to mimic the 6 feet rule. And Tree Town Cafe provided sandwiches and coffee to staff members. And 5th graders used stair-step manipulatives to solve math problems, a visual and interactive way to learn multiplication, division, adding, subtracting. In Harris Hill, staff were greeted by positive messages written in chalk by Harris Hill families. Wegmans donated reusable bags so kids can bring their own recess supplies to school instead of having the teachers clean them after every use. And birthdays were still celebrated in a special way. The teacher put an "It's my birthday" covering over their chair. In Scribner, there wasn't a ton for this school or Cobbles, but virtual curriculum nights for parents and teachers were held on the 15th and 17th. In Cobbles, 5th graders started their day with a community circle, and in the picture, you could tell that they were smiling even through the masks. In Bay Trail, posters about how to stop the spread of COVID-19 were posted around the school, depicting washing your hands and staying 6 feet apart. And lunchtime recess was still offered so kids could get some fresh air, even though it looks a little different with all of the rules and regulations. And 6th grade orientation was now held on Zoom instead of the traditional in-person type of meeting. And lastly, district-wide news. Each school took time to recognize the lives lost and importance of 9/11, called Patriot Day. All schools started their first day back on the 10th. Throughout the district, masks became a requirement, but also a new way for staff and students to express their interests. I know I've seen various subject masks and also favorite colors. And many kids in these districts received laptops for schoolwork. My brother was particularly excited about that one. And grab-and-go meals were offered to kids 18 and under. Okay.
Any questions for Abby? Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Putnam, student and staff honors.
Sure. So for our superintendent's report tonight, I'll just start that while everybody was very happy with Abby's presentation, I have to say that I'm once again shown up by our student rep because she stole all my great ideas, did a wonderful job. I love how you talked about every school, and I just want to share, it's nice to hear from a student too. I feel the same way with the masks. I will just say we were all very worried as adults on how in the world students were going to wear masks, kindergarten students, and as a superintendent I was worried, how are my adult staff members going to wear a mask all day? And visiting the schools and seeing photos and walking through and having my own children as students, it was just a concern I didn't have to lose any sleep over. It's been amazing, thanks to our incredible students, our incredible staff with the encouragement, especially our youngest students with a lot of mask breaks, but also our families, our parents, our guardians, our families who encourage that. And I agree, there have been some really cool masks out there. So I am shown up every day by our students and our staff with some really cool masks. So thank you, Abby. It was a great first student report. So thank you.
Thank you.
So this evening we have three areas for the superintendent reports. I just have one student honor to talk about. I do have some opening day comments, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Driffill, who's going to give us a budget update. So for our student update, or student honors, really excited to announce that Penfield High School senior Nicholas Corwin and Zachary Tyler on being named semifinalists in the 2021 National Merit Scholarship Competition. And this is always cool to read, is that they are among 16,000 semifinalists selected from over 1.6 million juniors who took the qualifying exam last year. And they'll now move on to compete for one of 7,600 National Merit Scholarships. So hopefully later this year, I'll also be doing an honor on Nicholas and Zachary on how they got one of those National Merit Scholarships. So congrats to those two. We have some opening day comments. First, I did share with Abby there. We talked about math, so I just have some great pictures. This is a young man at Cobbles, a very good-looking young man and a student. I got to visit Cobbles on opening day, and I just want to give a shout-out to this young man that he wanted, he's in 3rd grade, and he wanted to dress for success on the first day of school, so he wore a full suit. After this picture, he was in PE and also was amazing out there running all over the place with his suit on, so he absolutely incredible. And we have a picture from Harris Hill, great masks. A couple more pictures, Indian Landing and Scribner, and then Bay Trail and Penfield High School. So just, you know, the masks are different, but we're just a couple weeks in, and it really has become sort of routine. It's everywhere. It's not just schools, and we know that. So in terms of updates, I want to talk a little bit about our daily health screenings. So right now, all staff in the district, we're working on just getting everybody there, but for the vast majority of staff, we are all using what's called the Frontline Health Portal. It's an app through Frontline. All staff members know of Frontline because we use it for professional development management, absence management, the APPR process and evaluations all go through this corporation Frontline. So we have that and we use it. The health portal, I thank you to Barb Gregory, our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, and her incredible office that worked to get this up and running for staff. We are now using it for staff. And if a staff member doesn't complete the form before they enter the building, they get a very nice reminder by their principal or supervisor to do so immediately. And if not, if for some reason, then we would take a temperature. I know the system works because Barb Gregory texted me this morning that I hadn't done mine yet. I was on a phone call, work call in my car in the parking lot. She saw me pull in and was waiting to see me to say, Superintendent, you need to complete this. So I did before I walked into the building. So it is working. So that's good news for staff. Not so good news for us is the app is not working so well for students. And so as of now, we will be making a decision soon regarding Frontline for student health screenings. The platform simply not working as we expected. And what we don't want to do is roll something out that isn't going to meet our needs and then have to roll something else out a week later. And so we will continue to use Microsoft Forms, and those forms are emailed, the link to those forms are emailed to parents at about 12 in the morning. So by the time they wake up in the morning, they've got the email link, they click it, they complete the form. As a parent, it's pretty painless. It's just remembering to do it. We have a great success rate of parents doing it. And, you know, on average, we've got maybe 20 to 40 students, 20 at the elementaries or a little less, up to about 40 or 50 students at the high school. So out of 1,000 students, that's a really good ratio of success. So we're happy with that. Those students who don't complete the health screening or their parents don't complete the health screening are checked in at school as soon as possible following the New York State guidelines. I've been able to get to 2 schools and walk around with the individuals who are doing the screenings, and it works pretty well, and students are used to it. So we are still working. We're looking at other potential apps. I'll just share that there was a cost for for Frontline Health Portal for staff, but there was no cost for students. So if we end up going in another direction, we don't lose any money. There's no cost if we go in a different direction for students. But again, thank you to the HR office for doing all that work, and also because she always sits quietly in the audience, we'll give a shout out to Nancy Bradstreet, who is setting up all those emails that go out. Whenever there's an email from the district, usually it is Nancy Bradstreet behind that. Whenever you get an email from the district and immediately after a correction email, that's because I sent it. So thank you, Nancy. And thank you also Jim Pfeiffer, who set up that form and changes it when it needs to be. It's really, again, all of this is a team effort. So Microsoft Teams, I just will mention, as you heard already from our directors, is that all students should be up and running on Microsoft Teams. We encourage students and their parents to remind their students to check Teams and their district email daily. So this is where I always say, you know, I live this as well as a parent. So my kids were good to go with Teams, checking it all the time, and then I sent them a very loving and caring dad email, like, hey guys, I'm just checking in on you. And then I was like, why didn't you email me back? And they said, well, we never check our district email. So now they are checking their district email. So just as a reminder to check district email as well for things that are coming from principals and teachers. And then faculty and staff will continue to fine-tune our online instructional delivery, just as the directors talked about, as well as assessment and feedback. We are building a strong program, but we know that things change. We'll be looking for feedback, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Restarting athletics. So the board is aware that in the community now, through a couple of emails, is that we will be restarting extracurricular athletics per the New York State guidance. With the rest of, just about the rest of Monroe County, we are starting varsity and JV practice on September 28th. The state said we could start on the 21st. As a county, we decided to start on the 28th because some schools didn't start until the 14th. We really wanted a two full week cycle of students in class so we could kind of monitor if we were going to get hit with a positive COVID test. We just wanted to make sure that we were easing into things. So we will start practice September 28th, right around the corner, and for New York State approved sports. And modified athletics will begin in March. And we plan to run all New York State approved sports. Modified athletics, the fall season will start in March. So the sports that would typically take place now, like soccer, for modified, we are holding until March. Right now, unless the state says otherwise, we are planning on having our winter season right around the same time, right around December when our winter season starts. So the modified winter sports would start at the same time. So this slide, when I talk about modified athletics beginning in March, it would be the current fall sports would be in March. The spring sports would start in late April, so kids could play both fall and spring sports. And the winter would be in the December-January timeframe. More information will come. Please watch our emails and websites for more information. Ongoing program eval, so just to the community and the board. We will have some upcoming surveys out to stakeholders. Really, the three main groups are our parents and guardians, our faculty and staff, and students. And the survey focus is really around program effectiveness. So it's program evaluation we're really looking at when we talk about our hybrid model, our virtual model, and our specialized class 5 days a week. We're very interested in these three stakeholder groups on the effectiveness of the program, feedback and comments, and we're going to be continuing to look and see what we can fine-tune as we move through the year. We've said this all summer. We said this as we started the school year, that we can't close the door on any decision. We've got to be ready and be nimble. So before I take questions, I'll just share with this that there's an analogy used to me many times in my career that I then use many times as a leader, and that is about turning an aircraft carrier. And the reality is that in order to turn an aircraft carrier, it takes so many teams working at the same time to make that happen, and they don't turn on a dime. It takes time. So in order to prepare for an email that I'm working on for the community and for this presentation, I looked up, I'm going to get some facts on turning an aircraft carrier so I can talk about how difficult it is. And I immediately found, with thanks to Google, lots of articles, one written in conjunction with a Navy admiral, that turning an aircraft carrier is relatively simple. It can turn 180 degrees in 3 minutes. And then I realized that this was a terrible analogy to use because we cannot turn anything around in 3 minutes in public education. So I started thinking, and I like classic cars. I drove my first car ever was a 1973 Chevy Nova. The next car that I bought, I really went up and I bought a 1964 Chevy 2 when I was in high school. And I never really remodeled them. So this is how I look at this school year, and it's what's getting me through and as I talk to the community. This year, at this time, during a regular year at the end of September, we are in a really nice new top award-winning minivan. And we are driving across the country to California. And we got a full tank of gas, and we know and feel pretty safe that we will get to the destination. We might have to stop to add gas. We're going to have to stop to maybe change the windshield wiper. If we got a kid in the car, we're probably going to have to get a vacuum to get the goldfish out of the back seat. But we can feel pretty safe that we're coasting through, making some minor changes. That's a regular year. And I like the minivan. I like a regular year. But this year is us getting in that car and driving a partially restored vintage car. You know, it looks nice, but man, it leaks everything. And we're going to have to pull over routinely for gas because it gets about 4 miles to the gallon. And we're going to have to check the fluids. The tires aren't going to be aligned every few hundred miles. You know, we look pretty good doing it. We feel pretty good. We know that if it was fully restored, this car would go for lots of money at an auction. But we're really every single day praying that we're going to make it to California. But we got really good mechanics in the car. We know a thing or two about what we're doing, and we are going to listen to the folks around us to do the best we can to continue to build and get this car to California. So that's my analogy for the board and for the community, that it is not a nice, quiet minivan ride. It's going to be a little bumpy, loud, and maybe we'll smell the fumes. But you know what? We're going to be okay. We're going to get there, and we'll have fun doing it. So that's my report, if there's any questions from the board.
Based on that, does anyone have any questions for Dr. Putnam? Barb?
What color is this vintage
I was like, I want a picture.
Both of my cars were really vintage, so they were both brown. One was brown, and one was a light brown.
Oh, okay.
1960 colors.
I had
Absolutely.
a 64 Chevelle Malibu convertible, which was brown.
Thank you. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Driffill, who's going to give us a budget update.
Thank you, Dr. Putnam. Good evening, board, everybody watching remotely. We're only less than 2 weeks into school, but we thought it might be a good time to give a budget update. So you heard a lot this evening about summer curriculum work and new infusion of technology and software. But just to make sure that as we're on this cross-country trip, we're monitoring our oil levels, we're monitoring our gas levels. Okay. So just a quick, brief update to let you know where we stand. So everything that we've been doing resource-wise, not just dollars, but time, energy, people, has been ensuring that we can reopen with all the protocols that were thrust upon us, and not just surviving in this cross-country journey, but thriving and getting some good scenery and some good fun along the way. So cost-wise, personal protective equipment, PPE, we're a little over $200,000 in costs. So some of these, obviously in the spring, we weren't sure how long COVID was going to last, or unbudgeted. So this is everything from masks to shields to goggles to thermometers to everything under the sun, gowns, all sorts of various different things. We were lucky to partner with Monroe County along with our other school districts. They were able to supply a great deal of PPE late in the summer after we had already had some, but we still appreciate the partnership, so I wanted you to just be aware of that. On the technology side, you heard from Mr. De Lorenz this evening about the massive deployment of one-to-one technology in terms of laptops. So we're a little over $500,000 into technology costs, not just on the laptops, but on those mobile hotspot devices for those that don't have adequate broadband connections at home. And then additionally, as we mentioned earlier, some software around the employee screening, some software around student engagement platforms. The good news is that almost all of these purchases have been procured through BOCES, so they'll generate BOCES aid for us next year. And then personnel is something that's been top of mind. It's a little early to adequately gauge where we're going to be, but as you know, now more than ever, education is very people-centric business operation. Relationships are everything in that we do. Our budget's about 75% people-related, so we're trying to keep a very close eye on leaves, what are substitute costs going to be, the additional FTE requirements to match our hybrid and home learning systems. So we don't have really great information on that right now, but just want you to be aware that that is something that we're trying to keep a very close eye on. Sometimes we get bogged down in the materials and supply costs, but people typically are our biggest cost drivers. So looking at revenue for, 6 months now, we've kind of had the ongoing daily rhetoric from New York State leadership, the governor, the comptroller, that absent federal aid, there would be state aid reductions. The legislature did bake into the budget this year the circuit breakers, the measurement periods. We've gone through 2 of those. We're now in the 3rd, so that ends on December 31st. That gives the legislature statutory authority to reduce appropriations, particularly to municipalities, including school districts. At this time, they've basically just said they're going to hold off on any actual cuts and see what the federal government does in terms of stimulus. As I'll discuss in a moment, looking ahead, the federal stimulus doesn't look very promising at this point. The 2 sides of Congress just can't get aligned where they need to be. And now with the election approaching and a Supreme Court justice to go through that process, it's going to be just kind of taking the back seat.
Sure.
So what we learned last week is that the state will not withhold, and I use the word withhold because there haven't been reductions. The verbiage they've actually been using is withholdings temporarily because they don't have statutory authority at this point to reduce, is that they're not going to withhold 20% from the September payments like they've been doing for the July and August payments. So that's promising news. We don't know if we're going to be made whole necessarily on those July and August withholdings yet. They could be converted to permanent reductions through legislative action. Those withholdings currently amount to a couple $100,000, but the summer aid months typically are a little lighter. The September aid withholdings would have been more drastic. That would have been, you're talking about our BOCES payment, you're talking about the TRS obligation that the state pays on our behalf. So those have been made whole, so that's good news. What we're hearing is that as September ends, the end of one of the quarters for the state's fiscal year, is that they'll reevaluate and maybe we'll hear more detailed information in the absence of federal stimulus in October or November. So stay tuned on state aid. A subset of state aid was the CARES Act. So that was the federal stimulus that was passed back in April, which earmarked money for schools across the country. Penfield's allocation was $370,000. We budgeted for that full amount, but then back in June, late June, the Department of Education issued an interim final ruling that all of those funds would have to be shared with non-public schools within a school district's borders. So we do have a handful of private schools here within our locality that we thought we were going to have to share about $70,000 with. So this interim final ruling was challenged in court across the country. There was a preliminary injunction in Washington State that ruled against the Department of Ed's ruling. About a week later, there was another preliminary injunction that ruled against the interim final ruling from about 7 or 8 states, including New York City Public Schools. And then about 2 weeks ago, there was a summary judgment ruling on a national scale that ruled the interim final ruling was against the congressional intent back in the CARES Act, so that we won't have to share. So the state's going to issue updated guidance, but it looks like at this point that we will be made whole on those CARES Act funds. So just an update on that. The lunch fund, so the National Federal Lunch Fund Program, about 2 meetings ago, we had a long discussion with our excellent food service director, Mr. Argento, talking about the food service budget and that things were going to be back to normal a little bit with food service. And then on August 31st, the USDA decided to extend the waiver that we were operating under, the emergency waiver, whereas, as Abby mentioned earlier, every Penfield student under the age of 18 can get a free breakfast and lunch every day. So that has been a positive change. We're seeing more breakfasts go out. Lunch is still a little less than where we were last year, but it's picking up already, just less than 2 weeks into school. The caveat with that is the waiver was only extended until the funds run out or to December 31st, whichever happens first. So we're keeping a close eye on that to see what happens. But that was a positive development for our lunch fund program. So looking ahead, like I mentioned, federal action does not seem like it's going to occur. The House of Representatives and Senate just seem very far off on what they want to do in terms of stimulus. At this point, it's a never say never. Things can change. As you know, I feel like we're perpetually living in the Lucy holding the football in front of Charlie Brown world, where you think you got it and it gets pulled away and you reevaluate as you lay on your back. So we'll see what happens there. As I mentioned before, the state will eventually have to do something. They are facing quite a deficit in their operations. So in the next few months, I anticipate we'll learn a little bit more. But for now, at least through the end of September, some better news on that front. Budget management is something that we're keeping a very close eye on. So typically with a school budget, it's your roadmap for the year. You don't deviate a lot. Yes, you always keep some flexibility, and yes, you always have some variance to allow for the unforeseen and unknown things, but you pretty much establish all your initiatives and you kind of know what you're going to do. This year, it really is different. We might see revenue drastically decline. We might see expenditures drastically increase. One of the things we're keeping a close eye on is the county sales tax money, the sharing that's going on. As the economy goes down, are we going to see a lot less? Some of those numbers have been a little strange. They were way down in April and May, and then they picked back up in June, and then they declined again in July, and then they look like they're back up in August. So it's kind of a balancing act. Seeing where we go into the fall, obviously, will determine that on a greater scale. But all in all of our typical budget items are still rolling on as anticipated. We're still transporting kids 5 days a week. We still have staff in the buildings 5 days a week. We're still cleaning the buildings 5 days a week. Now that we're going to have athletics rolling, we're going to have buses rolling on Saturdays again and at nights. So it seems like a sense of normal. So all of our ongoing costs around electricity and materials and supplies, all those things are as is. We're just trying to keep an eye on all those, the far end variances in the corners of what we do. And then finally, we're only a week into school, but I'm already looking at next year's school budget. Because there's questions around what's going to happen with state aid. So if the cuts are drastic this year, how will they build the state budget for next year? Will they change aid categories? Will they change building aid? Will they change transportation aid? Will they change foundation aid, BOCES aid? What is the local funding makeup going to look like? Inflation's only trending a little over 1%, which would be way less than the 2% that's in the allowable cost driver for local tax cap formula. Property development is kind of hard to gauge right now. House prices are way up. A building looks like it's down a little bit. So what kind of assessments are we going to see? Are the towns going to go out and reassess? All these things we're trying to keep an eye on. But obviously many more conversations to come. And for now, things are good. I think structurally our budget is in great shape. And we do have ample fund balance to mitigate some of these effects in the year ahead. So just a quick update for you on budget.
Thank you.
Any questions regarding any of those items?
Any questions? Okay, Lisa?
I just wanted to clarify, when you were talking about the current tech expenditure did you say about $500,000?
A little over, yeah.
And is that above what we've budgeted, or does that include?
It's within the overall constraints of our budget, but it wasn't dollar for dollar budgeted in terms of this money will be for technology. So we found money elsewhere.
Okay. Because I know we had budgeted a certain number of replacement.
Definitely.
So that's included in that number?
Yes, some of it, yep.
Great, thank you.
Just a comment that I've noticed that there's been some questions in the community about, I think there's some confusion over what happened with the extension of giving the free lunches. I've had some people say, hey, I gave a check and they took it, and now I'm hearing that. So there might be a confusion out there on what happened with that. So I'm just thinking maybe some more communication to people what's going on.
Well, can I ask, just to clarify, so you've heard in the community that people maybe put money on their lunch account and
Things
then...
like that, yeah.
Yep, okay.
And just overall confusion over what happened, like, where are we paying for lunches, are we not? There was some confusion over, I heard this, that the federal government did this, but I'm not sure.
Yep. So I appreciate that. We did share, but I know that in the world of emails, things get lost. So I'm sure an update is probably a great idea. And just I'll take a moment to give kudos to Joe Argento. One of the things that was unforeseen was the pickup time for the lunch handout. And again, this is for any student 18, is it under 18 or 18 and under?
18 and under. 18
and under is whether you're virtual or hybrid. It's not about free and reduced lunch numbers. It's if you're in Penfield, you can pick them up. And our 100% virtual students in the AM were going through noon, so they couldn't actually leave to go pick up food. So if you had a kindergartner, you can't leave them at home, you got to bring them. So very quickly, like an aircraft carrier, Mr. Argento turned and shifted his staff and changed the pickup time to make sure that students in that program. So it just, it wasn't on purpose, but once we heard the one comment, we realized this is a problem, and he fixed it. So worked with Dan and fixed that. So we can definitely appreciate that. We'll get word out, and if anybody's watching, share with your neighbors that if there was money collected, including my own, when we set up our account, that money stays on the account, the students do have access to free lunch and breakfast every day. If they're in the building, they can go pick it up during their lunchtime, and if they need to pick it up, we have signs at all of our buildings on directing folks to where to go pick up the breakfast and lunch.
Thanks.
Yep.
Regarding the lunch, you talked about the lunch fund until that runs out. I just want to confirm, that's separate from the free and reduced lunch program. So even the lunch funds, this special exemption, I think you said it was the lunch fund, that is separate from the free and reduced, so that won't run out.
Correct, yeah. So we have our normal ongoing lunch fund operation, and we have students that are eligible for free and reduced, which are then reimbursed by the federal government and partially by New York State. This is a waiver that was completely supported by the federal government. That just includes all students. So you don't need to be eligible for free and reduced. Any one of our kiddos that lives here is eligible, as is until the federal funds theoretically run out. Yep.
Any other questions?
Before I conclude superintendent reports, I will just say a thank you to Dan. I think any business official joining a district new during this time of year is maybe not what you dreamed of as a child when you dreamed of being a business official. But I just want to say thank you. He does bring some calm and ease to this, and I need that because I head into panic mode looking at our budget and looking at costs, but he's very, very diligent around this, and I appreciate it. So that concludes superintendent reports.
Thank you, Dr. Putnam. We are now on, I believe, item 5A, which is facility change orders. You see the list of change orders in front of you as part of the package, and it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following change orders as described in the package.
So moved.
Okay. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Since we're so eager, any questions or comments? All those in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. And that takes us to the Monroe County School Board Association meetings. There was one last week, which was a legislative committee. Catherine, Dean, and I attended that. And so I'll let Catherine go ahead and go first.
So we covered quite a bit, and there's obviously a lot going on. I'll give you a few of the highlights. And okay, let me just see. I'm trying to put it in order here in my mind, but I might just go with where my notes are. There was a discussion about unemployment insurance, and Sherry Johnson has been in touch with Harry Bronson. And so he's been working to check whether or not school districts will be reimbursed for unemployment. And then another issue that came up in regard to that was identity theft. And so there was a small discussion about that, because we kind of have to wait and see what Harry can report on that, but that's in the works. And they also mentioned that maybe that would be covered in labor relations. So you might see it elsewhere and not just in the legislative aspect of it. Let's see what else we have. Sherry sent a letter to Bob Duffy regarding the unfunded mandates that all the districts are dealing with. And she let him know that businesses are burdened, and the districts are burdened and whatnot. And she got a response from his assistant, Mark Cohen, who told her that this is super information. Thanks for sharing. So she wanted to share that with us. And then she heard or reported to us that Cuomo had told the feds, which y'all may have heard anyway, if you're going to pass the buck, then pass the bucks, which we all got a kick out of, because that's what we've been saying all along, because he's doing to districts what the feds are doing to him. And it's just been his long-standing pattern, and so it's kind of an irony that we all just kind of talk about it and raise an eyebrow, but nevertheless, it's serious, because so much is hanging in the balance, as Dan was just telling us. As of our meeting, the legislature still hadn't been called back, but Harry believes everyone's ready to go. And he is saying, and I think we all believe in legislative, that this year is kind of okay. It's what we're looking at next year and beyond with funding and everything else that's going on. Mark, was there anything else that you wanted to pick up on?
Yeah, a few things, and I think you covered the vast majority of it. The one thing I want to talk about, just unemployment, I'm not quite sure if I heard it or not, but the issue with unemployment is, and I don't know if we have this situation in our district, but if there were teachers that have a 10-month contract, they're not unemployed during the summer, so they shouldn't be
It was
filing.
something like that, and I couldn't hear it as well as one of the problems we had, we met at Doubletree, and between the spacing and everybody wearing masks, hearing in there was very difficult for both Mark and me. So that's why we're kind of splitting it up, because I definitely heard, I heard some things very clearly, but that was one there was a little bit of a question on.
Yeah, it was tough to hear, and so yes, we're talking about the mandates, and mandates is a constant discussion, and but this year, as we know from the guidances that came out from multiple state agencies, they were just in addition to the normal school mandates that we always try to reduce, there were just layers and layers of mandates on top of that. And those all have costs, and we talk about now you have to report daily, and that's not a big deal in itself, but just one more incremental cost that gets layered on top of everything else. It's not that they're without merit, but they're also they incur a cost, and so there's that stress in addition to what you've heard as far as the risk to state funding and federal funding. It's a time for us to really keep advocating, saying we've got to keep going forward and do what we can to really focus on doing is important and get rid of some of these mandates that are not, as we say, that are not really key for the students in education or safety, for us. The one thing I just wanted to mention is that the other thing that, and Sherry is a great advocate for all of our districts, is that private schools, and I'm not sure about charter schools, but private schools were eligible for PPP funding from the federal government, so they could request that money to make up for revenue loss or when they didn't employ people. public schools are not eligible for that relief. And that's the kind of thing that is,
Yeah.
you know, that, you know, we're trying to advocate for, saying we should get those same, at least that same kind of opportunity, especially from the federal government.
That was federal, not state? I was just curious. That
I
sounds like
think the
sounds like
PPP
a
was.
formal thing, but it's just.
Yeah, well, yeah. But nonetheless, you know, there's certain things where, you know, we're trying to make sure we can get the same benefits that other educational institutions get, and that was one of them.
Yeah. But Dan, didn't you mention that we got reimbursement or from BOCES? Because I couldn't hear exactly what you had said about that, but was there some relief through BOCES on that?
So I think the difference, the question of equity there would be the Paycheck Protection Act. Private schools were eligible for that in the spring. That was the massive influx of money that was given out to employers to not lay people off, to keep people on the paycheck. You can look, that information is public, anything I think above $25,000. So we do have private schools in our area that receive some of those funds. Like Mark mentioned, public schools were not eligible for those funds.
Okay.
So we got a piece of the CARES Act money, that $300,000. But if you look, you know, some private schools got orders of magnitude larger than that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
We're in frustrating times on this end, and, you know, as on every end, we all know that. But one of the things that legislative does is they do the Albany trips. We don't even know if we can do that this year. So, you know, we are ready to do our advocacy, but right now, a lot of it is what the committee talks about and then what Sherry can share with the lawmakers. And then after the election, she did say that, wait a minute, she was invited to attend a meeting. Oh, no, wait a minute, hold on. Oh, no, after the election, she is looking, a legislative committee is looking to invite our legislators, you know, much like our legislative breakfast, so that we can have a conversation about, you know, what it is we're facing. But, you know, if Albany runs true like it normally does, it'll just tell us, what do you want? You know, you can't get blood from a stone. So, you know, we'll see what happens, but we're aware and we're doing what we can, but we just have to take it step by step.
Okay. And there's no unfinished business. Is there any new business? All right, seeing that.
Oh, I do, just a question. This vehicle that we're in, should that be under new business or?
No, I have a,
You need to get us some pictures of
yeah, I can definitely get you some pictures of the vehicle in my head that I'm chauffeuring across country to get us there. But I do like how Dan mentioned that there is pretty scenery. So we do have to enjoy this ride. We really do.
I'm looking forward to it. I just want to know if there's a spot for it on regular business or.
As long as we have a qualified driver.
Yes, yeah, we have lots of great drivers. You don't have to trust me. We have an incredible transportation department who I'm sure will help us out.
That's right, Emily.
Okay, again, so there's no new business. So with that, may I have a motion and a second that the meeting be adjourned at 8:34?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. Meeting adjourned.